One thing that's really on my mind lately is this thing about realizing who we truly are. And so when I came up with the title, realizing our true self, of course, that must mean that there somehow is some not true self. So I wanted to speak a little bit about what these two sort of figures are, and what the qualities of the different figures are, and how we can live in a way that embraces both of them by understanding what their then true nature is of these two parts of us. There really isn't two parts; it is one, but it's just a metaphor, a way of speaking about it. So if we start talking about the way we grow up, right? We grow up, we are being told that, oh, you're a sweet little girl or a cute little boy, and so that's one of the first labels we get on. Then we get a name, and then someone might say, oh, you're really good at math, or you're really good at running, or you're certainly good at football. Oh, you're a little clumsy, you don't know how to do that. But so very, very quickly we're brought up in a way that allows us to start seeing things around us, and we learn to say, oh, there's a lamp, or there's a table, and I'm clumsy, or I'm good at math, or I'm bad at running, or whatever. So we start putting labels on everything, and it's wonderful. It's really fun to see children as they learn to speak. So it's the way we learn things. Now, what happens as we get older and older is that we start believing that all the labels that other people put on us and the labels we've put on ourselves are who we are. Right? We think I am my body. We think I am clumsy, or I'm good at math, or I'm not very good at running, or whatever. So we start believing all of these labels, and of course, some of them are not very nice. So we think, oh gosh, will people like me if I'm not very good at running? Well, maybe I should pretend that I am. Or so we start to create this kind of a separate self, a persona, or an ego, as we call it. We start to create this character who is better than we think we are, who always has great hair day, who's always smiling, who always has the sun on their face, and all these lovely Facebook images of successful people. And it's like we're creating almost like a cardboard cutout of ourselves that looks really pretty, and it's just always happy. And we start walking around like, with it in front of us, hoping that nobody will see that we're actually hiding behind, because we think that who we really are is this ugly or not good enough person. So an enormous amount of people have this sense, I'm not good enough. And so the only way we can have that sense is by thinking that there is some ideal that I have to live up to. So we keep looking at ourselves. We keep looking at, oh, she's better looking than I am, or he's smarter than I am, or wow, I wish I could do the same thing that person over there is doing. So by comparing ourselves to other people, I mean, there's always going to be people who are more intelligent or more beautiful or more successful or something, right? It's always going to be the case. The thing is that when we do that, we start feeling like I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I'm less than. And of course, that in turn creates the sense that, oh, I have to improve. I have to be better, or I have to lie about who I am. And I don't know if you can get the sense that it's really hard work, right? It's hard work trying to be something that I think I'm not, trying to be smarter or more beautiful or more successful. And so I'm holding on, this cardboard Natasha that looks amazing always, and it's just there's never a bad or a rainy day. It's just always good. But you can probably imagine that if I'm holding on to that, my knuckles are getting all white, because it's really hard work holding on to the image of being someone that I'm really not. And what's behind this holding on is thinking that my true self is this being that's less than, not knowing who I really am. Because if I knew who I really am, who I really was, who you really are, then I would see that labels are not necessary. So, so we walk around, and your cardboard self is meeting my cardboard self, and of course, it's quite superficial. How are you? Oh, I'm wonderful. How are you? Oh, I'm great too. Life is just gorgeous, right? So we're sort of lying to each other, trying to be the best of us, and only with our really, really close friends do we say, I feel terrible. I'm really frightened about this corona, and I'm struggling financially, and we don't say those things to a lot of people because we're frightened that they won't like us, that they won't love us. So we have in our mind and through culture this whole imagination about what it takes to be loved, right? You must look a certain way, you must speak a certain way, you must have a certain career. And if you don't, well, there's just no space for you. So through our upbringing, parents, culture, school, friends, whatever education we've had, we're bombarded with these images of what we're supposed to look like, feel like, and be doing in our life. So no wonder we get confused. No wonder we lose sight of the essential part of who we really are, because who we really are doesn't have a form. Who we really are doesn't have a good hair day or a bad hair day. Who we are doesn't have more success or less success. Who we are can never be less than or more than somebody else. So, how do we get a sense of who we truly are? Well, the beautiful thing is, and what I find in my work is that actually most people get a sense of that once in a while. Like they drop into that once in a while. And how you know that you've dropped into that space is that it feels really nice. It's really difficult to put any words on it. It's not like, oh, I'm deliriously happy when I'm there, or I just feel great about myself. No, there is no self. Like the separate self that we are used to having a close relationship to, like, oh, I'm happy, or no, I'm not happy, I'm sad, or I'm angry, I'm worried. That self feels a certain way, and it very often that feeling of the separate self comes with some sort of tension. It comes with a sort of a tiny bit of stress. Even the happiness can be like, oh, I'm so happy, but there's a kind of a tension with it. If you notice the times during the day, or like if you just think back in the past week, I'm sure that you can all recognize that there have been times when you just kind of relax into yourself. Maybe you came home from work and you sat in your favorite chair, or maybe you were looking out at some beautiful tree in the garden or something. Just there's times of the day where we naturally drop into this space within, the space that Dickon and I call home. But you can call it anything. It's just within. It's not inside the body. You can't find it in there, but it's like it's within ourselves. And when you fall into that space, there's just a knowing of peace. There's a knowing of silence. And there's a knowing that feels very comfortable. There's a contentment. In this feeling, there is nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's just this total embracing of all that is. Now, wouldn't we all like to feel that more of the time? Of course we would. Everybody longs to be there more of the time. So what is it that stops us from resting in this space more of the time, from living from this space more of the time? Well, it's the separate self, funnily enough, because the separate self constantly has this chatter in your head. Oh, you must do this now. Oh, you should do that. Oh, you better do this because otherwise it keeps kind of like shouting in your face that there's things that are important to do. It keeps giving you a sense of urgency. No, no, you really must do this, or else whatever is going to happen, something's going to happen. So this sense of urgency that ego projects out and keeps telling you about it kind of feels like you're being drawn into an experience of constant stress and anxiety, right? So there's this constant pull for something else. Oh no, don't stand still. You've got to do the next thing, otherwise whatever's going to happen will happen. So there's this stress, and then of course stress is not very nice. And if we don't know where to look, typically we'll look outside. We'll try and find something that will ease our stress. And of course we will, because none of us like to be stressed. So, oh gosh, a gin and tonic, that certainly relaxes me. So, oh, that's a good way of getting out of this stress. Or, oh, if I shop for something, that eases my stress for a little bit. Or if I, smoking, or I eat, or whatever. So, because we don't know where to find this space within, because we don't know that home is always with us, we look to the outside. We look outside of ourselves to try and find something that can put us into a space that resembles vaguely what it actually feels like to be home, right? That sense of just, oh, a couple of glasses of wine and I'm good, or oh gosh, a big piece of cake, or a whole bar of Cadbury's fruit and nuts, which I miss because we don't have those in Denmark. Whatever it is, there's something that sort of in the short term gives me a sense of, oh, this is good. This is me taking care of me. I'm doing something good for myself. Of course, until afterwards, I go, oh gosh, I shouldn't have eaten that, or drunken that, or whatever it is. So we have this separate self. It's constantly bringing this sense of urgency into our life. It's constantly screaming at us to get something done, because it never, ever is happy with where we are. As soon as you get something, like ego might say, oh, you've got to go for that job, get that job. You get the job, and ego goes, yes. And then the next thing is the ego goes, well, maybe you should get the next one, or maybe you should try and get a raise in salary, or maybe, well, now you have the job, now you should get another house, or another husband or wife, or whatever. Ego is never satisfied. Ego never finds a space where it goes, oh, good. I'm content. Ego's sole purpose is to drive us towards something that it keeps imagining. And it really takes a big toll on us, because we're constantly running. You probably have the hamster wheel, metaphor. You've heard about that. Like, we're running and running and running, and we're not really getting anywhere. So that drives so many people, and that is the main cause of stress, is trying to catch up with ego that keeps. I sometimes have this image of the little thing, like a little devil with a whip in its hand. Come on, Natasha, you could do it. Go on. I certainly used to live the first 42 years of my life that way, until I met the principles about 8 years ago. So I know that whip feeling very, very, very well. Now, what happened when I came across the principles 8 years ago was that I started to see another reality. I started more and more to be pointed towards this space within, which is just pure awareness, pure peace, pure love, pure light, embracing everything. And the more I dropped into this space, the more often I was there, the more that became more and more part of who I am. And it became obvious to me that whenever ego started to scream, because my ego can scream just as loud as you guys, says ego can. But when it does, I'm more able to go, oh wow, it's really screaming right now. Wow, it must feel uncertain. But I know where to look, which is the beauty. I know that what's going on in my experience in the hamster wheel is not who I truly am. And so there's this sense of knowing all of my experiences. So I can have an experience of stress. Well, what is it that knows that experience? the experience, if it has a movement, right, it feels like, oh, it's stress and it feels horrible. Yeah, but what is aware of that? What is it that knows my experience? If you go to the knowing of the experience, you'll start to notice that the knowing of the experience and the experience are not the same. So you start to realize that there's something that always knows whatever is going on. Another metaphor to use around that is to have a sense that the sky knows the clouds, it knows lightning, it knows tornadoes and thunderstorms, but it's not affected by them. And the sky doesn't mind. The sky doesn't have a preference for rainbows over a thunderstorm. The sky allows everything to go on in its vast open sky, because nothing can affect it, nothing can harm it, nothing can hurt it. And so when I know that I am the sky, when I realize my true self as being this vast open empty space, then it's much easier to allow any experience to come. Okay, there comes stress. All right. Gosh, there comes sadness. Okay. There comes worry. That's all right too. So the more I rest in my true self, the more I'm able to just allow any experience to come and go. Because notice that experiences always have a beginning and have an end. Everything that comes into your awareness comes in and then it leaves it again. So of course it can't be me. Of course I'm not something that can come into existence and then disappear again. What is it that's always there? What if we start paying attention to what has been there always? If you go inside right now and start to reflect on what is it that has known all of my experiences, the experiences of being 1 year old, the experience of being 3 or 5, right? The experience of being 10 years old, the experience of being a teenager with all those different things that you probably was going on for you guys, like with me. The experience of being in my 20s and I don't know how old you guys are, but then 30s and 40s, and I'll be 50 later this month. So something throughout almost 50 years has been awake. Something has been aware. There's something inside that knows everything I've been through and is unharmed by it. Realizing that who we truly are can never be harmed. It can never be hurt. There's no scratches. There's nothing that can damage or harm us in our true being. It's such a relief. It's incredible to know that whatever bad things that I've gone through and that you've gone through, and through my work, I hear about really, horrible things that people have been put through by other people, or by themselves, but often by other people. It's horrible, and they might have scars on their bodies from those experiences, but their soul cannot be scarred. It cannot be harmed because it doesn't have a form. Like if I take my water glass and I drop it, it'll probably splinter into lots of different pieces, right? Why? Because it has a form. Everything in form comes into this space and it disappears at sometimes. My body is a form. It was born and it will one day die. Everything that we see in the room around us has a form. It was thought of. It didn't exist at some point. Somebody had a thought. Oh, I guess I could try and make a lamp or a light bulb. I guess was the first thing. And so the light bulb was created. It wasn't at one time, and then a guy created that, and now we have light. And then that has changed in many ways since then. So everything in form has a lifespan. So there's a time in ego's world. Ego has to create time to be able to navigate. Ego also needs space and matter to navigate. So everything that is time, space, and matter is ego's domain. It's how ego gets around. It's how ego gets you to think that what you're feeling right now is not okay. But in some future, if you do well enough, if you meditate long enough, or if you read enough self-help books or take enough courses or whatever it is, then you'll be okay. That's how ego operates. And it's just whipping us around like a circus, animal that's going around in circles, or in the hamster wheel. That's what ego does. But knowing and finding our spiritual nature, realizing and recognizing that that's not who I am. And I don't want to make ego the bad guy here, because ego is also a wonderful tool that we can use to make plans. You know, for instance, I'd love to make a plan right now that next time I see Carolina and Wayne, I'm going to give them a huge big hug, right? So that's a wonderful way of using ego. And next time I do have to go to London, I will have to plan that. I'll have to, get flights and find a hotel and all of those things. So ego is a wonderful tool. Thinking is a wonderful tool. We have a personal mind that's able to think anything. What a great gift. This is wonderful. So ego is great at planning. Ego is great at practical things. I mean, we couldn't do our work without ego, right? We couldn't do anything. I just cooked a lovely meal for my husband. I couldn't do that without my thinking. And ego is also wonderful. Thinking is wonderful for sometimes stopping and asking a question to myself, like going, what I'm experiencing right now, is that who I am? Is it true? And so it's good for self-reflection. It's good for looking within and asking questions to find out what's really going on here. So those things are wonderful tools that we have. The thing is that the power of thought that's powering all of this personal thinking has an unlimited capacity to think anything. The power of thought is not the personal thinking that we have. The power of thought is the energy or the power behind all thinking, which means that we can, I can think of a lovely trip to London, seeing my dear friends, but I can also think, if Corona continues, what will happen? Will all of my business dry up? Will we start fighting at home and my husband leaves me? I mean, I can think anything, because this creative potential behind thought makes it possible for me to think anything. And so I can go anywhere with my thoughts, with my personal thinking. But again, I can notice that, but I can also notice that there's an awareness behind all of my personal thinking, that my personal thinking is known. Known by what? Known by awareness, known by consciousness, known by the power that we call consciousness. The power of consciousness is that we can become aware of our experiences. Instead of being sucked in by our experiences, which is what happens constantly. Now, when we sort of rest in this pure consciousness, it becomes really obvious that all of our experiences arise from this space. So we can see how all of the experiences that we've had throughout our lives have come and gone. And we start to recognize, oh my gosh, there's something that hasn't come and gone. There's something that's always been here. There's something right now in you as you're listening to me. There's something in you that's aware of you listening. So you can hear what I'm saying, you can see me, and you're listening and maybe making images in your head. But something's aware of that. Something knows that you're having an experience right now. That knowing itself is pure consciousness. It's the vast open space wherein everything arises from. So whatever you're thinking and feeling and experiencing right now, that arises from this inner space. And something knows it. Something is aware of it. And that something is always there and it cannot be destroyed. And that's really beautiful to know. And the last thing is that resting in this pure consciousness and realizing how thought creates content and content sucks us in very easily. Me too. This content sucks us in, but seeing that it's the power of thought that does that takes us again to the spiritual place. Knowing that everything arises from consciousness takes us back into this space inside again. And then also, there's something that powers life itself, right? There's this beautiful power that knows how to create anything. We can call it creation itself. We can call it life. We can call it the intelligence behind life. But there's this beautiful power behind everything that has created me and you and everything we see. It's an incredible intelligence that has created everything that we know in the universe. Now, just to recognize and to see that I am part of that, you are part of that, of nature, of creation itself, really can make us realize and rest into something has my back. Something is living me. I don't have to do it. It doesn't need my help. Whatever kind of challenges you have, and we all have challenges, of course we do. But whatever challenge you have, the intelligence behind all the universe doesn't have a problem with your challenge. It's tiny for it. It's just a small thing for it. Unfortunately, it doesn't move in time, so it's not that you can have it do something for you that you want to do in the future, because it exists only right here and right now. So being in the present moment, knowing that I am part of creation, I am part of life itself. There's something that has always lived me, that is beating my heart, that's making sure that I breathe, that's making everything in my body work. That is who I am. That is what I'm a part of. There's a knowing behind all of experience. There's a creative potential behind all of life, behind all of our thinking. So whenever we turn inside, whenever we stop whatever the hamster wheel is telling us to do, the screaming of the ego, and we start to listen to our heart, this gentle inner knowing that just gently allows us to rest inside, allows us to know that we're okay no matter what happens in experience. We're okay whatever happens in our circumstance. There's nothing that can happen in our circumstance that can hurt our true self, because our true self is formless. Only things in form can be broken. Only things in form can be taken away from me. My job, my husband, my house. That's always the case. And Corona has not made the world more uncertain. It's always been uncertain. It's just it amplifies it right now. It makes it really obvious that that's how it is. So when we look outside of ourselves, we're not going to find peace and quiet. It's uncertain out there. So where do we look for certainty? Where do we look for the peace that we're actually looking for? Turn around. Look inside. And there's no real looking. I say looking, it's a metaphor. It's a sense. It's a subtle sense that you might be able to have a feeling of right now. It's a subtle feeling of aliveness. Now, you might use another word. I sometimes kind of feel like, oh, I'm alive. Like, can you sense you're alive right now? How do you know you're alive? There's a knowing in the aliveness. Behind the chatterbox of my mind, there's peace. It's always there. It cannot go away. And there's a sense of contentment. It's a really pleasant feeling, although I can hardly call it a feeling. It's simply just a sense of being content that there's nothing I have to do and nowhere I have to go. And the more I rest there, the more I know this as being my true self, the less hold the screaming separate self has on me, the more I can recognize, oh, here we go again, it's yelling something at me. I don't have to listen. I can rest here. And when I do need to act on life, because of course I do, I can't just sit on the couch all day. Well, I probably could, but I don't. When I allow myself to be moved by wisdom, then I start to be more effective in my work. I start to have better relationships. I call people up that I haven't seen in a while. I write an email or I send a text. Because what happens when I don't get caught up by all the ego, when I'm caught up by ego, I become egocentric. It's all about me and it's all about my survival and what's important to me. When I'm not caught up there anymore and I rest in my true self, I become other-centric. I become more loving. I become more caring. I think about how can I help? How can I be of service? What can I do for other people?